1. I was about 14, turning 15 in a month, 5'2" and slightly chubby. I should probably also mention that I am a female. I was at this shady grocery store with my mom. It was cheaper than most other stores, so we went there often. I was unloading the groceries when my mom had to run back inside to pick up some cheese and vegetables she'd forgotten to get. After she entered the store, a man with an old white car parked right next to me. He got out and looked to be in his mid-40s. He was overweight, tall, and wore a wife-beater shirt, a baseball cap, and some jeans. He didn't look out of place, just a typical redneck that was common around here. He approached me and smiled. "Hey, I think I've seen you at church. I'm Joe, remember?" he said. He started to unload my groceries with me. I'd just gotten back from church, and this man definitely wasn't there, or went there. Our church was extremely small, and everyone knew everyone. Red flags started popping up, but nothing creepy. I politely told him that I didn't need help with groceries, and so he asked me about myself. Where I went to school, my name, how old I was, what grade I was in. Stuff I know now I shouldn't have answered, but I was naive enough to tell a stranger. "You're adorable. Is that hair natural?" He chuckled and started to get more flirty. But a lot of people ask if my hair is natural, since it is a nice auburn color. I said yes and told him I was getting into my car, trying to get him to leave me alone. He laughed and waved. My mom came pretty shortly after that, apologizing that it took her so long. About a week later, I was leaving school to get in my mom's car when I see the same white car parked in my school's parking lot. My heart started pumping and I went into my mom's car. The white car followed us home. My mom was oblivious to the situation. Once we pulled into the driveway, we went inside and I saw the car speed off. Couple days pass and I go out to walk my multi-poo. I look outside and the white van is parked 2 houses down. Joe gets out and starts waving, yelling my name, saying, "You left something at the store." I pretended not to hear him through my headphones and kept on walking. He starts approaching me, angry. I decided to cut my walk short and go inside. I went back to school the next day, and his car was parked there when I got to school. A period before lunch, I got called on the intercom that my uncle dropped me off lunch. I'm close with my aunt and uncle, so it doesn't seem unlikely that he would drop me off lunch. But I asked him later that week, and he said he was at work at the time. Nothing was weird about it. It was picked up from a fast food chicken place and came with a milkshake, so I was pretty happy. He still parked there about 2 more weeks. Summer break was approaching, and what I suspected was Joe would bring me lunch about every other week. 3 weeks before exams, there was a lock-in, which wasn't uncommon. Sometimes deer would come by, and they would put the school on lock-in. This lasted all day, and we couldn't switch buildings. I got out of school and had 5 texts and 1 call from an unknown number. 1203. "It's me, Joe." 1203. "Let me in school, I want to see you." 1205. "I will torture you if you don't let me in." 1 missed call. 1210. "I love you more than anything. Don't my gifts show that?" 108. "But I wouldn't mind seeing you tied up." How the hell did he get my phone number? Shivers went down my spine as I went into my mom's car, and the white car was still there. I told my mom everything then, and showed her the texts. She started panicking and crying, and when we got home and the white car parked where he always did, my mom got my grandfather to go out and talk with him. I've never seen Joe or his white car ever again. My mom put me in a new school, so I doubt he'll find my new school. It's been about a year since this happened, so I doubt anything else will happen, but I'll post an update in the comments in case anything happens. God knows what would have happened if I let him in. 2. I live near a small city, which is notoriously known for its use of drugs and illegal drum and bass raves due to how remote and isolated it is. Usually they don't end up badly, but there is usually a report every week about someone being stabbed or killed, etc. Growing up in a rural part of the country, I find myself usually with nothing to do. All that surrounds me is fields, pigs, and more fields. So, the best any teenage girl can do is the occasional campout on a field with her friends, or maybe roaming the various abandoned farmhouses. Except, every summer, there's a 3-day festival that has had its name changed 3 times, due to the scabby reputation it has. My family is slightly torn apart. My dad lives abroad as an expatriate, and me and my mum only moved here for my education, but that's another story. Basically, we aren't very familiar with the area we live, because we lived in the Middle East for so long and my parents are originally from London, Surrey area. So we never knew how bad this festival could be. I spent 1 day there, from 11 AM to 11 PM, and within this time I experienced more use of drugs, violence and outright sex than my entire, at the time, 15 years of life. But the one experience that stuck out to me was in the drum and bass tent, which, as I referred to earlier, was filled with the usual illegal ravers, except legally. Second-hand high from the weed smoke and slightly tipsy from alcohol, I discovered my love for the rave scene, until I got parted from my friends. I was bobbing back and forth to the music when a guy snaked his hands around my waist and put his fingers in my belt loops. This surprised me, but it didn't register for a few seconds, due to the smog that was in my brain. I pulled back, and asked what he was doing. He was a tall black guy, we'll call him original, around 6'6", 6'7", mid-20s to early 30s, and he told me that he'd seen me and thought I had an amazing body, and he wanted me to come back to his tent with him. What was my number, how old was I, and where did I live? I was wearing jeans, a high-cut shirt, a windbreaker, and sneakers. My body was not being shown off by any means. I laughed. I'm not very good with confrontation unless I have my friends around me, and usually resort to being a bit timid and nice, in the hopes people leave me alone. Bearing in mind too that I am Caucasian female, 5'6", and maybe 125 pounds. I told him I was only 15, that I was fine here, and I wanted to keep dancing. He slicked his tongue against his teeth and stared at me, with his eyes slightly laughing. I don't know how else to explain that. And I backed away and kept dancing. Stupid of me, I know. He came back up behind me, pulling my coat up a bit, and putting his hands on my bum, where I immediately turned around and told him to get off me. He backed away and told me that he just wanted to get to know me better and take me away somewhere private. I told him that wasn't going to happen and just to fuck off. The humor behind his eyes wasn't present anymore. Instead, they turned cold and nasty, and I'll never forget that. Fast forward maybe 10 minutes. Another black dude came up to talk to me while I was taking a breather at the back of the tent. He was saying I caught his friend's eye. They all thought I was gorgeous and wanted me to come with them to smoke, pointing towards a large group of black guys surrounding and patting Original on the back. I told him that I was with my friends and I didn't want to do that because they'd be angry if I left them. He told me they'd never know and put his hands around my waist, really tight, taking me toward the group. Again, I pulled back and told him that I didn't want to do that. And he looked back at the group and shrugged. This happened twice more with different things said and offered to me, and the group getting angrier each time I blew them off. I just ignored this, not wanting to cause a scene, feeling kind of what the fuck at the entire situation, and went back to the throng of the crowd, where the entire group formed a circle around me, bumping against me and pushing Original towards me. He cupped my face in his hand and loud whispered, the kind where you're drunk and in a loud environment and only want them to hear. All the things he wanted to do with me. That I could be his young, tight vanilla to his dark chocolate, and he'd destroy me, but I'd love it. My friend actually appeared at this moment, seeing my face completely contort in absolute terror. She told him I was a lesbian and not interested, dragging me away and back towards the toilets away from them. They were shouting how I was just a fuck anyway, and all he wanted was a bit of meat. You'd think the story ends here, but 3 hours later, me and the friend saw Original being dragged out of the tent by 4 security guards, being held by his hands and feet and put behind a big door that was for drug searches. Like a scene from a movie, I saw the doors close as the guy was held down and a security guard ping some white gloves onto his hands. We found out later the guy had literally grams of angel dust in wraps and wraps of little baggies hidden up there. I mean, I don't know what he was definitely going to do with that, but something definitely tells me I would have if I'd gone with him. Big black guy who wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. Let's not meet again. 3. I'm a 21-year-old female attending a small liberal arts university. My school only has one hall designed as a traditional dorm, and it is reserved for freshmen. The rest of the dorms are designed as suites, most containing 3 double bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a common room, and a kitchen. My particular dorm was one of 2 that offers 4 private rooms, 2 bathrooms, a common room, and a kitchen. I should probably mention that my particular building required you to ID to get into the front building, a key for your suite, and an additional key for your personal room. The suite doors locked automatically, but we were the lucky winners of the room that didn't always lock on its own. Since we live on such a small campus, we never really saw it as a risk. We were familiar with most of the people in our building, and for the rooms we weren't familiar with, our friendly RAs were kind enough to put all our names and room letters on decorations posted on the front of our suite doors. For future reference, my friends will be known as Lena, Molly, and Sarah. The boyfriends will be known as Josh, Adam, and Mark. This all started around the beginning of February of my junior year, so about 10 months ago. I lived with 3 of my closest friends. All 3 of them had boyfriends, and at the time I was still single, so I spent a lot of time alone. As I previously mentioned, I had my own bedroom. My friends' rooms were no more than a couple steps away, being that we all still lived in the same suite, but at night, they were all tucked up tight with their men, and I was alone in my room. It wasn't uncommon for me to freak myself out. The first night he came, I had been up late studying for a Spanish test. Around 2:35, I unplugged the lights that hung from my ceiling, got dressed, took off my glasses, and laid down. It wasn't uncommon for me to be up at this hour, because I had been suffering from severe insomnia brought on by chronic nightmares. So it is likely I would have been awake even if I hadn't been studying. What is uncommon is that this night, of all nights, I decided to sleep naked. I never did this because I was always freezing, but for some reason, I guess I was hot. At exactly 2:44 a.m., I heard the door in our common room open. Our door made a decently loud squeaking sound every time someone opened it, so it was easily distinguishable. I thought this was odd because none of my suite mates were ever up that late. Lena and Josh were asleep in the room directly next to mine. Molly and Adam were asleep in her room at the opposite side of the suite. I knew for a fact that Sarah and Mark went to sleep in his room, in another building for the night. As I was laying in my bed facing the wall, I told myself not to freak out. It was probably just one of my friends either leaving or going after arguing with their boyfriend. As much as I wanted to believe this, I could feel that there was something off. About 2 minutes passed, and that's when I saw the reflection of a flashlight on my ceiling. It was coming from underneath my door. A little more anxious at this point, I again convinced myself that it was one of my friends. Someone began to slowly turn the handle of my door. Whoever was at my door was obviously unaware that my door was uneven, so every time it was opened, it would swing completely open. At this point, my heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I did not want to leave my position of staring at the wall to see who it was, but I knew I had to. I propped myself up, careful to make sure my blanket stayed covering my naked body, and I saw a man standing in my doorway. He was shining a flashlight directly onto me. I'm nearly blind without my glasses anyway, so I could not make out specific features in the dark. All I could tell was that this guy was decently tall, and was wearing sweatpants, a hat covered by his hoodie, and a backpack. We stared at each other for about 30 seconds, until he literally turned around and started sprinting away. As soon as he was gone, I darted out of bed, put on clothes and my glasses, and ran into the hallway. He was definitely nowhere in sight, but I went back into the suite and locked the door. I attempted to wake up Molly and Adam, but she's a bit of an ass when someone wakes her up, so she shooed me out of her room. I obviously didn't sleep the rest of the night and reported the incident to campus safety in the morning. The main security officer asked me to recall the details of the night, and told me he would file a report. He said that it was most likely someone who entered the wrong room, and that the guy was just as freaked out as I was. I wanted to believe that because it was a lot less creepy, but I knew that I couldn't because all of our names are on the suite door. He knew exactly where he was going and who he was looking for. Nothing happened for about a month. The next occurrence came around the same time of the morning. But this time, it was a flashlight outside of my window. I tried to stay out of view, and the light went away fairly quickly. I tried to let this one go because I didn't want to think about what might have really been happening. I told a friend of mine about the flashlight the next morning. She lives on the same floor as I do, but in the building next to mine. She freaked out when I told her about what happened. In the moments before the flashlight appeared in my window, she happened to look out her window. She made eye contact with the man, holding out the flashlight on his phone, as he was walking toward my window. He darted away when they made eye contact, and it was too dark for her to see where he ended up. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday, my dad called and asked me to go to dinner. I go to school out of state, but my dad does a good portion of his business in my school state. When I got back to the room that night, my friends had already left and gone across campus to a party. The plan had been for me to meet them there once I was back from dinner and done getting ready. They were at the party of a guy I was talking to at the time, who later became my boyfriend, which comes into play later. As I'm getting ready alone in the room, someone begins violently pushing on our suite door. Still creeped out by the previous occurrences, I cautiously walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Surprise, surprise, it was covered. The guys across the hall heard the commotion and chased whoever it was out of the building. Behind our dorm is a wooded area and the guys lost him at the entrance. But now I'm already on the phone with my friends and we're all in a panic. One of the guys across the hall drove me to the other side of campus to be with my friends so that I didn't have to walk alone. We were all freaked out, but let it go for the time being. Nothing happened for a couple of weeks after that. Fast forward through spring break. The week everyone arrived back was pretty normal. The guy I had been talking to, Jared, became my boyfriend, and I started to feel much safer as he slept over. About another week went by before anything happened again. It was the beginning of April, when what I had concluded to be my stalker showed up again. He seemed to have a thing for showing up between 2:30 and 3:30, possibly because he knew I was typically the only person awake during those hours. I apologize for this next part, it's probably TMI, but it was 3 a.m. and Jared and I were fooling around. As I'm half naked and going down on him, I see a bright light shine through my window. This time was different than the last. It was as if the person had the flashlight and their body pressed up against my window. By the way, my window never actually stayed locked. Most of the windows on campus were that way, so I guess my school is cheap. I freaked out and jumped up, pressing my body against the wall to try and get as far out of view as possible. I felt violated and exposed. I wouldn't want anyone to witness what was going on, especially not a complete stranger. I'd had enough of this. As if I didn't have a difficult enough time sleeping already. Now I had to add watching out for creepy guys who go bump in the night. to my list of reasons as to why I couldn't sleep. I reported the incident to campus safety yet again, and again they promised to look into it. They had already told me they were planning to put video cameras on the back of my building to try and catch whoever this was. Clearly that never happened. Another couple of weeks go by, and we're about a week and a half away from finals. By now, I look like complete shit. Professors started asking questions. Friends unaware of the situation expressed their concerns. All I could think about was finishing finals and praying that this would all be over. I wasn't lucky enough to escape without a final goodbye from my late-night visitor. My boyfriend and I were asleep in bed. Yes, I was actually asleep for once. There was a point in time when I was a heavy sleeper, but that time had long since passed. It was as if my brain was subconsciously on high alert at all times. I awoke to a strange sound. It wasn't very loud or threatening, but I still waited a few seconds before opening my eyes. As soon as I opened my eyes, I instantly knew that my bedroom door was open. And throughout the entirety of my life, I have always slept with my door closed. My room is pitch black, and as I said before, I am as good as blind without my glasses. But this didn't stop me from spotting the shadowy figure moving away from my bedroom door and into our common room. Terrified and praying that I was about to wake up from one of my nightmares, I didn't move. I wanted to keep calm and pretend it wasn't real. This lasted all of about 30 seconds before I shook Jared awake. I told him about what I thought happened. He was tired and definitely annoyed, but he still agreed to go check the common room. Jared was in the common room for a couple of minutes. I started to get nervous because he hadn't come back yet, so I went to check things out myself. I found him in the common room just looking around. He hadn't even bothered to turn on the lights. Maybe he was still half asleep. Maybe he was scared of what he'd find. Who the hell knows? He saw me come in and tried to reassure me that he looked around and found no one. This is when I turned on the lights. One of the common room windows was completely open, and the blinds were half destroyed. I looked at Jared with tears in my eyes, and my whole body began to shake. He said he hadn't even noticed the window because the chair was in front of it, and the blinds were technically still down. He closed the window and tried his best to lock it. Somehow he calmed me down and convinced me to go back to bed. He was able to eventually fall back to sleep, but I laid in bed the rest of the night, fearing that this guy was going to come back. Finals concluded, and I returned to my home state for the summer. I never learned this guy's identity, and still can't decide if this is a blessing or not. There were no signs of anything like what happened at school while I was home, although I did receive an abnormal amount of phone calls from blocked numbers. I've since returned to school, and I'm halfway through my senior year. My friends and I relocated to a building on campus that requires each person to have a roommate, so I feel safer than I did before. But I still have trouble sleeping. Nothing super weird has happened yet this year, so I'm hoping it stays this way. For those of you as naive as I was, please understand that even the smallest, safest places are not as safe as you think. Lock your doors. Lock your windows. Don't go anywhere alone at night. Pay attention to your surroundings and be aware. As for my creepy stalker, who had an odd fascination with windows, please, for the love of God, let's never meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 208. Thanks very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, where are we now? Let's see, this will be a Wednesday, won't it? Yes, it will. Right, so I'll just give you a quick update. We'll have glitch stories with any luck, fingers and toes crossed, on Thursday. I've got most of what I need, I just need 2 more. And I think, yeah, well, I've got lots and lots and lots of paranormal stories. Whatever is going on with Let's Not Meet is not happening with the paranormal subreddit. I got oodles of responses the other day, so we're sorted for them. And I think we're pretty good actually for TIFU and Saturday. Even if I don't get any from Reddit, I've got a good few from you kind folks sending me lots and lots of stories in. So thanks very much for that. And on Sunday, I'm still mulling over something to try on Sunday. Want to do something a bit different, like I've been doing. So we'll see what I come up with. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to head off for now. Get to work on making these videos. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.